Yeah, some teams are just going for full offense and no defense, and then that screeches to a halt when they meet a team that actually plays defense.
It just makes no, like Portland's attempted to do that for the last handful of seasons, and it never works.
And the Nets now, like...
Yeah, fuck the Nets. I'm done with the Nets.
Man.
I never started with the Nets, so I can be done with the Nets.
So,
yeah,
man,
Jay-Z's involved, I'm out.
So, like, with the Nets, this year, Joe Harris just became, like, the top 3 scorer of all time for the Nets.
Yeah,
I thought you meant all time. I thought you meant all time. I was like, what?
And
I believe
it's because nobody's stayed with the Nets for long enough that, like, someone can, like...
Well, and when you play with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, you're gonna have a lot of wide open shots, and he's a good shooter. So that's easy money.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Pursuing Pixels. My name's Kevin Portelli, and I'm here tonight with John Hines.
Hey there.
And Randall Nolery.
Hey, folks.
And we are back, as always, to talk about some video games. And it's been a little while since we've sat down to record one here, guys. I was just actually looking at the notes. It's been almost exactly a month. It's been 4 weeks.
Sounds about right.
But you're none the wiser if you're listening. So, but since it's been a little while, what have you guys been playing? Anything new or more of the same, perhaps?
Absolutely more of the same.
Nice.
It's always more of the same.
What have you been up to, John?
I've been playing Genshin Impact to the point where I am almost at max level.
Which I feel like you were nowhere near last time we talked about it. You're like, oh, I've only done like one character.
I still have not spent a single dollar on this game, but I have spent
good for you.
A lot of my life and
precious time
that I have left on this earth.
Limited time, yep.
But no, I beat the furthest point in the story that they've made so far, and they'll be rolling out a new chapter of the story soon, and that'll be a whole new area that will unlock all new side quests and an entirely new element, and it's
nice.
I'm going to be for the very first time at the forefront of like new content in the game, and that's exciting. I'm pumped for that.
That actually sounds kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like at least I've never experienced a game like in the World of Warcraft sense, or any game that kind of gets continuously updated like that. Like I've never played a game where I've been on the cutting edge.
Yeah, so I'll still be playing Genshin. I'll be talking about the newest sub things that they're introducing, like the rhythm game that was the last week or two ago, and then now it's a dungeon crawler, some separate side quest thing that's going on right now.
Nice.
There's always new content in Genshin.
Is a rhythm game like a combat element, or is that
no? It's
okay.
The nice thing is that it is like just the music that's from the game, so like it's just an isolated track, and it was. I was playing with a PS4 controller, and it was using the 4 face buttons and the D-pad, and you were playing that kind of like it was a concentric rings that would close in on the beat that you had to press them on those
kind of like
buttons.
like Elite Beat Agents kind of stuff.
Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah.
What a great game. What a great game.
I know. A Wendan the same way.
Yeah.
Yes.
What about you, Randall?
Yeah.
I have been playing NBA 2K22.
Yes.
The newest entry from the NBA.
I was going to say, we haven't
franchise.
talked about 22 much. Yeah.
I try to save
passing.
it. I try to save it off the cast.
It's inevitable.
Bringing it to the cast. Because that's what I spend my time doing, apparently.
Yeah.
And if it's still got the hooks in you, man, that's saying something.
Year.
Not every game can really like suck you in like that. You know?
And speaking of being like on the like cutting edge of new updates, this is like one of the first times where I've got like the new system, this Xbox Series X, and then the NBA game, like as soon as it came out, like I bought it digitally. So like, whereas, I had 2K21 also on the Series X, but I didn't have it immediately. I got it for Christmas, and then like they had already done a bunch of stuff by then. So yeah, like new NBA season started in real life, got 2K22 because I'm a big basketball nerd, just like John.
Yeah.
So we love our basketball. And yeah, it's still real good. I have not played a lot of like the regular mode, I guess, or the My GM mode, which is often what I go on incessantly.
I was going to say that's your cup.
It is, but when you do it enough times, it's seemingly the same thing again. I haven't even looked this time because I don't need to be sucked into that hole. I have too much else going on. But so I played one of the other modes, which is My Team, which I have played in the long ago past, in like 2K 18 or 19 on Switch. I played this My Team mode, and it's essentially like collect the basketball cards that turn into real players, and which allows them to go into like the historic players, and like so then you can get Rip Hamilton and Ben Wallace and all these guys get their cards, which then they're on your team. You can make this basically like fantasy team and then face off in daily challenges with said fantasy team. But you have to like apply contract cards. Like they can only play for a certain amount of games unless you get a diamond contract card, which gives like unlimited games. So like there's elements that way, which can be insidious. They definitely want to push you towards spending real money to buy packs, so you can get more players and more, badge cards or contract cards or shoe cards that have their own mini badges to give you +2 in 3-point shooting or whatever. So,
wow.
So I know how I would play a mode like that, which would be, I would, I don't know if there's like, are you able to like level up gold cards to diamond cards, or is it all just like randomly pulling? Like, no,
not really. What you can do is like with those badges, because there's like badges are basically like those like abilities that a player have. Like Ben Wallace has like an intimidator badge around the in the paint and stuff like that, and maybe it starts out as a bronze, but if you get the silver and gold badge cards that you pulled in a pack or got on the auction market, then you can upgrade that and make him an even better Ben Wallace. But his like core stats don't necessarily change. That's the only way to affect him, is like through those badges, or upgrading a shoe and then putting said shoe on him. But the shoes don't even last for an unlimited time necessarily, unless you get a certain type. So like there's all kinds of well-engineered things in this that you have to watch out for. It's very like mobile game, a little gacha-esque in that way, but it's also
very Genshin-esque.
I was gonna say, but it almost sounds like NBA is like maybe even more. I don't know, a little bit more guilty of it.
Yeah. Especially in previous years, I think it was even worse than it is now. I think they've got so much blowback that they've kind of cooled it on some of these modes versus what it was a few years back. So, like, I had a little bit of a credit balance, so I did spend, unfortunately, a little bit of real extra money. And because I did do, like, the digital pre-order, I get, like, a promo pack every week. So that kind of, like, keeps me going, too. But, like, competing daily challenges, or, you can go through an all, like, history domination of, like, every team's best players on their teams, like, face off against the Lakers with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Magic and... nice. Shaq and Kobe, like all on the same team type of thing. So
yeah, that aspect seems really fun. Like
it's very
even
cool.
in like NBA playgrounds, it's fun to like bust open a pack of like, I got, even when you get a player you already have, like, but I got like Reggie Miller when he was, Reggie Miller was always on the Pacers, I guess, but like that wasn't a good example. But like, I got this guy, I got Ben Wallace when he was on this team or whatever.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like kind of a fun, and digging back into the previous eras is always fun.
Oh yeah, that's where most of the fun comes from me. Although it's got all the the new players too, which is fun. Like all the new rookies will be mixed in right with those old school guys. So yeah, of course there's like the daily check-in stuff. It's all the same business model. It's so well developed at this point, and they've got me hooked. So I'll keep that on the back burner for a while. It always keeps a version of my attention. I got to get my daily check-in bonus BS. So
yep.
Yeah, now that you got a digital right on that Xbox, which I know you said before, it like fires up in an instant.
I know. With the Xbox stuff, I went all digital, which is just so not me, but it's so much easier.
I every now and then I contemplate it on the Switch, and I'm just like, there's like when I know we're going to talk about Metroid Dread a little later, and that's one where I'm like, I can't get that digitally. I got to get the cartridge of that game.
Same.
There's just certain ones, but then but there are games like now I don't wish this because I hate Mario Golf, but like when I first bought Mario Golf, I was like, I wish I bought this digitally because I was picturing I was going to be firing it up all the time and playing it nonstop, but. Like the arcadey multiplayer stuff, I do sometimes wish I went the digital route.
Yep. But ease of access.
Speaking of not going the digital route at all, we've been Randall, you and I have been digging into some retro Game Boy action. Actually, kind of, I can't even remember what inspired this initially.
We made a pinky pact to play through the Super Mario Land games. And that expanded from there in scope, which is fun because I like to play old Game Boy games. It's been a fun excuse.
Definitely. And I think, you know what? I think it might have been around the time that WarioWare came out. I might have said something like, I want to play the Wario Land games. And then you were like, we were just like, why don't we play the Super Mario Land games? I've never played 2.
Yeah.
And I started playing 2. And then, and that's what actually I spent most of my time with over the course of, when we said we were going to talk about these. I didn't play all the way through either of them.
Yeah.
But I have played all the way through Super Mario Land 1 in the past. It was one of the games I had growing up on Game Boy and played a ton of it and really had a hard time with it as a kid. Like, that game, like it's really tough, especially it's got some janky physics, but like almost, I have got some, I can't really make up my mind because 2 is pretty fucking janky too, like in a totally different way.
We're gonna have to get into that.
We'll talk about each game, but we might have to go back and forth a little bit. But with Super Mario Land, especially as a kid, like Super Mario World was my first game, so coming from that. Having a Super Nintendo.
It's tough to go backwards.
Playing Super Mario Land was like, what the heck? Like, even I think I've, on the podcast, I'm sure I've like ripped the original Super Mario Brothers on the podcast. And like, just how the physics are really heavy and weighty and it's hard to go back if you're playing Mario World or Super Mario 3. Yeah. So Super Mario Land is like, man, this isn't even like trying to do the same thing. It's like it's really different. Mario looks totally different. Just like the weight of your jump feels, the arc of it, everything is totally different. The run speed, but at the same time,
you're in a submarine and then
which is like
there's
the best
like
part.
Little shmup stages, and
I love those parts.
I don't know how to explain it, but like the enemies are really bizarre.
They make weird noises.
They do.
Like really bizarre, like almost like Pokemon-esque, like monster,
like fly monsters and stuff. But like I don't know, Island heads.
The level, like the worlds are very bizarre in both games for that matter. But you can tell, like with I guess with Super Mario Land 1, it really did feel more like they're kind of going more for the Super Mario Brothers kind of style game, and then definitely it did feel like they're like with Super Mario Land 2, they're like, okay, we really got to push the limits and bring. I don't know if it came out. Did it come out after Super Mario World?
I think it did.
Because at Game Boy, I know some of those later games came out, in like 98, 99.
Yeah, 92 for Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins.
Okay.
So, and it feels like they had Super Mario World as a reference point. When
with like the overworld and everything. And it just the way everything's kind of laid out. But, with Super Mario Land 1, you got like Mario shrunk down to like this little tiny, like
so
bitsy sprite. Like it doesn't
small.
Like. Yeah, it's very bizarre because like they almost emulate the 16-bit style on Super Mario Land 2. Again, it's very much like a 8-bit version of it, but it still kind of looks like the Super Mario World sprites.
It does. It looks nice in 2.
Yeah, but it looks totally different in Super Mario Land. Like it's very much like just these kind of blobby, really dark, like black colors and stuff. But I don't know, like at looking back and playing the two now, like I really thought I was going to be like, man, because I hadn't really played Super Mario Land 2, 6 Golden Coins much. Like I had dabbled in it just a tiny bit whenever I first bought the cartridge, but I don't know. I actually ended up, I lean towards, I still prefer Super Mario Land 1 pretty heavily over Super Mario Land 2. I really think like because of the bigger sprites and like the way they kind of like wanted to push for like these bigger levels, I think they ended up feeling kind of more empty and like more kind of, I don't know, the jumping just feels kind of like, although the levels just feel really sparse, really kind of, I don't know. I felt kind of bored playing the game the whole time. Wow. And with Super Mario Land 1, I didn't feel that at all. Like you said, like 1 minute you're in a submarine playing a shmup underwater, shooting at dolphins. Yeah. And the next minute you're like, jumping around in I don't know, in a UFO or something. Like there's some really cool stuff in the game. And I really, I didn't have the experience I expected to have with these two.
We're also legally obligated to mention the soundtrack to Super Mario Land. So because it's fantastic.
Yeah, and far superior to 2 as well. Yeah,
I'll give you that. I think. Although I do like 2's soundtrack on its own, but yeah, Super Mario Land has absolutely classic tracks.
Yeah, some of my favorite video game tunes of all time. Period. And again, it is one of my first games, so I have fond memories. But and John, I know you said Super Mario.
Whatchamacallit, invincibility music.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you said this was one of your first games too, John. Right, Super Mario Land, the original.
Yeah, my first 2 platformers that I had were Super Mario Land and Donkey Kong Land 2. For the Game Boy.
You got the best one.
Yeah, but those are as far apart as you can get. Like where Donkey Kong was still trying to do the pre-rendered 3D sprites, but on a Game Boy.
Original Game Boy.
Darkest. And doing it pretty darn good though. Yeah, it's a little blurry.
Good, but it is such a dark game, and like that Donkey Kong platforming is so different from the Mario platforming.
Big time.
Especially the Mario Land platforming.
Big time.
Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, like any kind of platformer that you're kind of, again, Mario, I guess, doesn't emphasize speed as much as Sonic does per se, but like you're kind of, at least the way I play a Mario game, I'm holding down the run button all the time, typically running to the right and trying to basically speed run, not for real, but I'm essentially trying to just like move as quickly as I can through the levels. And like on that small Game Boy screen, I think, especially in Super Mario Land 2, I think it really kind of suffers from that, like just not being able to see what's coming. And like,
I think that's the big difference between us. That's the difference between me and you, Kevin, is I don't take the levels that quickly. I take my time with the levels. I find all the little secrets. I'm jumping around randomly for hidden blocks and shit. Like
I still look for the secrets, but like I'm still sprinting. I'm always holding down the run button at all times. I never will let that go.
Understand? Yeah.
But yeah, I just kind of like, I don't know. They just felt kind of like repetitive. It felt like a lot of reused. I don't know. Something about Mario Land 2 felt like half baked to me. I really was kind of bummed out as I was playing it. Like I played about halfway through the game and just kind of was like, I don't need to play the rest of this game.
So what I'll say, I know there's some nostalgia wrapped up in Super Mario Land 2 for me, because it was one of my first games, and like another one of my like first gaming memories is like being at a babysitter's with my original Game Boy and Super Mario Land 2 and being like, what the hell do I do next? I never beat Wario at that time, but I liked the game at that. I never had the original Super Mario Land, so I like didn't know what I missed until like way later when I started like actively collecting stuff and like, oh yeah, I should go get this first one. But yeah, I always liked it then. I still like it now, but how much of that is just because I've got a lot of the levels still like memorized in the back of my head. I don't know. That might be a big factor. I like the charm of both Super Mario Land 1 and 2, but 2 in particular I think looks really nice, even though it is zoomed in, which is like obviously a common problem with these Game Boy games of that era, is they zoomed it in for a better graphical effect, at the detriment of gameplay in theory.
Yeah.
But no, I still think it kind of works. I think there's, like I said, some great songs in Super Mario Land 2. And yeah, some of the levels, like There's a space level that I really enjoy. There's some mechanics that you see, like getting bunny ears and stuff that you don't quite get in subsequent Mario games. Both all the land games that way, like they didn't just carbon copy what the Bros games were doing necessarily. They kind of were their own thing, which is cool.
Super Ball.
Yeah, the Super Ball in the first Mario Land is such like a weird thing. But it's just like bouncing geometrically around the level until it goes away.
I almost forgot that's like, that like it in my head, it's just like, oh, that's the fireball in this game. But yeah, it's like, no, it's totally different.
It is.
And they brought that back even for the Mario fireball Maker in Land 2, which was great for some puzzle levels that people did.
Yeah. Because they can collect coins too, which is like so weird.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. I really liked, I don't know. I really liked playing 1 again, and when I did play all the way through it, I never beat it as a kid, but when I did play all the way through it a few years back, I was like, I really enjoyed that game. I thought it was like oddly charming. I don't know.
Yeah, although the jump like angle and stuff had me jumping into pits and getting frustrated relatively often. But then in Land 2, it happens sometimes too, more than I would have expected. So. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think with Land 2, and I might just be having the same experience that you're mentioning, like with the nostalgia for Mario Land 1 and kind of being like, oh yeah, I remember this and I remember these tunes. And especially because I didn't play through the whole game. I just kind of like refreshed my memory on it and was like, oh yeah, I love this game, or I remember all these levels. But yeah, with Mario Land 2, I felt like, I don't know, I went to like a few different worlds. I do love how all the, like the overworld map is amazing. Yeah. Like I love the different zones. And then great. Like when you go into like the different areas, and it's really fun. Yeah, like, and it's really fun, like all the different like mini games, even though they're mostly the same, like the grab claw thing after you beat a level, like if you ring the bell at the top.
I get like 3 heart lives every single time.
You just rack them up, just like in any Mario game. You're just racking up free lives like it's nothing. Man.
Yeah.
But at the end, like, I did find that, like, and maybe it was just the levels that I selected, because it is pretty open-ended right off the bat. It seems like you can not necessarily go anywhere, but I was able to walk right up to Wario's castle and, like, see his shadow running around at the top, which was, again, very reminiscent of Super Mario World with Bowser's castle area, which I guess you can see that pretty early in that game, too.
If you go the secret route,
Like, if you go through one of the pipes, But yeah, I don't know. I just thought like some of the levels I picked, like even in different worlds, had like reused the same song, and not in like a different way where it's like in the typical Koji Kondo of like, let me remix this in like a cool way or take that same melody. It was like a totally different world, but with the same tune. And it was like that.
Yeah.
It was that song that's supposed to be kind of spooky sounding, and it is spooky sounding, but it's like really sparse. Like there's like tons of emptiness, like where there's just like a note or two.
I like that track.
Oh, I can't stand that track. It was driving me nuts. It fits the right tone for sure. Like it hits the note it's going for. But I think I was getting frustrated on that particular stage with like those goopy things that you have to jump through, where you're kind of swimming, but not quite.
All the things I like.
It's I guess I do appreciate that it feels like you said very different from the Bros games, and it is like they feel like relics almost, I think was the word I was looking for earlier, but they almost feel like a little relic of like almost like what if Mario's in a different universe, not in the Mushroom Kingdom anymore.
Yeah, it does. That Wario battle's no joke either. That was the first time I beat him. It's just recently.
Yeah, I didn't see. Now you're making me want to play a little bit more, because I think I might have just maybe picked some of the dud levels or the more open ended levels, because I was enjoying the charm of the game and the general like. But as soon as I stopped, I just have found myself not wanting to boot it up again. Like I played a good chunk for like 2 sittings, and then I just was like, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to play some more Super Mario Land 1.
Sure. The big downside that I will grant to Land 2 in particular is there's some serious slowdown at moments. It chugs at points.
I was lazily playing it on an emulator because I didn't feel like pulling out my Game Boy, and it was chugging, but I just assumed that it was the emulator or my computer or whatever, but okay.
Nope, it chugs. It definitely chugs.
And 1 definitely does not. That game play is as janky as it feels. Like the jank is smooth, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Everything happens the way it seems like it should.
Yeah.
But
I'd go with that.
But yeah, it's kind of a, Mario 2, the US version, obviously on NES has its own version of like Mario in a different universe. But yeah, it's kind of nice to see how Mario Land in both of these kind of takes things. Even the fireball, you get like a feather cap instead of a suit. I guess you don't really get a cap in
you could do the twirly move too
games.
to crush blocks underneath of you, which can do a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, that is a nice touch too. Yeah, just being able to hold down, and do that spin move, definitely. Yeah. But Randall, I know not too long ago we knocked John's resolution game from last year off the list, and I'm cutting mine even closer than both of you guys. But I know you got yours, and I know we teased this a few weeks ago. But you played some Ori.
I did. I beat Ori and the Will of the Wisps, which was my resolution game this year.
Nice.
Yes.
Man, you're just beating all these games. Like, I'm feeling like a chump now where I'm just like, I just checked this out, played a little bit.
Yeah.
You're also playing like 10 times the number of games that Randall and I play.
Exactly. I'm just
Not
like
lately.
sticking, like just like ardently sticking with games at this point, and that's why I'm beating them. Like, I'm
you feel
pushing
like that's
through the irritating moments,
Is that a byproduct of being done with school?
100%.
Or is that
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I don't have that excuse, but
stick-to-itiveness and like just like I'm in this zone where like I have to feel the need to be productive, and I've channeled that at video games in my backlog.
Nice. Nice.
But Ori and the Will of the Wisps is not a game with irritating parts in it, in my experience.
Nice.
I think this game is fantastic. I was also a huge fan of Blind Forest. This game will be on my end of year list.
Nice.
I will say that much right now. I like it that much.
Dang.
Well, I forget, where did you land on Blind Forest? Did that have more like frustrating or irritating segments in it then?
Yeah, I guess so, because I did just like straight up stop playing that game at a point.
Yeah.
For a while. Like I picked it up practically a year later and finished it. Because I wanted to play Will of the Wisps, but I wanted to play through Blind Forest first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I will say I'm glad I pushed through, because I ended up really liking Blind Forest a lot too. Like that game has its own merits, but yeah, it's like it just didn't quite capture me, at least in the mind space I was in 2020 when I fired it up, and it was probably 2019. Maybe even earlier, whenever we played it.
Yeah.
However long ago that was. Yeah, however long ago that was. But yeah, it did. I don't even know if I'd say irritating parts in Blind Forest, but it just like didn't quite grab me the same way at first. Will of the Wisps grabs me at first, like, and maybe that's just kind of a through line from me getting so familiar with the game engine from Blind Forest. And playing it on, the new Xbox, where they've optimized it, where you can do this crazy, like 6K downsampling at, 60 frames per second, like just, overkill stuff, but it looks beautiful. And man, like probably one of my favorite Metroidvanias that I've played.
Okay. Nice. What are they bringing new to the table, as far like, are they throwing like new mechanics into the mix? Because I would say, like, going into Ori and the Blind Forest, I was thinking it was going to maybe be a little more narrative-y, and it definitely has a narrative element. And I haven't beaten Blind Forest, but I feel like it was more just kind of like set in tone, and like it was a lot of wordless segments, just kind of like setting the mood. But it wasn't really. Like, you definitely felt like you went on a journey, but it wasn't like story heavy per se. So is it like throwing new mechanics into the mix, or is it just continuing the story on?
I wouldn't say, it definitely continues the story on pretty directly, actually. But nice. Will of the Wisps, very similar storytelling methods, like not necessarily a ton of, there are words, but the words, have meaning at very specific junctures to help tell the story. But most of it's way more vibes and visuals and soundtrack, that's telling that story. But the new mechanic, couple of new things that really, I think, enhance the experience is combat is so much more engaging in Will of the Wisps.
Okay.
Way
and that was definitely
more
one of my, I wouldn't even say gripe because I enjoy Blind Forest a lot, but I would just say that like if I complained about anything, it's like, yeah, combat's kind of like secondary.
Right. And it is in Blind Forest. And here, you're taking that same extremely fluid platforming control that you have in these Ori games, and you're adding a fluid combat control that's fun to do over and over again and gives you a lot of variety in the way that you can do said combat. Because so essentially it's like this, there's this badge system, the skill tree is gone, and now there's these essentially like a Paper Mario or something. Like you get these badges individually, and then you equip said badges in your badge slots, and you can unlock more badge slots over time by completing these like combat shrines that you find in the overworld.
All right.
Okay.
So,
almost
you'll get
like Hollow Knight a little bit too, like where you can like equip a certain number of things. Yeah.
Yep. Very similar that way. But it's not just weapons. It'd be like, your triple jump is a badge that you'd have to equip. Or like one of the main ones that I loved is, and I didn't bother looking up the name of it, but it's like this hammer attack that like Ori does this fluid like swinging motion, and it like knocks the enemies, and a lot of times they go up in the air, and then if you hit it again, he'll kind of continue his motion and like hit it in a very fluid way, and it just feels really good, almost like a fighting game mechanic type of way. Like you can tell they spent a lot of time getting the feel of the combat right, because they heard not criticism, but that Blind Forest wasn't really about that. It was more just like exploration and platforming, and there's enemies to get out of the way, but you do your homing attack from your orb or whatever and get rid of them, which you could still do here, but I didn't do that.
You do still have that orb
as an option.
Or that's just one of the badges. Okay.
Exactly.
Interesting.
I never used it.
So you don't. Okay, that's super interesting because I would say, it's hard. I guess we'll just I might use the word complaint, but it's not an actual complaint. But that's like what the complaint I had about Blind Forest is like. You're just kind of button mashing. Like as long as an enemy is like within your radius, you can just kind of button mash and like it. Yeah, it was like you said. It's like the enemies are almost there just for the puzzle platforming sake of like you being able to use their projectiles to dash through,
right? Or themselves to like bounce off of and dash off of, right?
Yeah, and then if they're like otherwise they're just like in your way, and then you have to kill them, and that's you don't really need to kill them otherwise. They're not really. Right. I guess they do kind of. They like they'll they'll shoot the shit out of you. Right. But yeah, I'm really glad to hear this. I really am like wanting to play Will of the Wisps even more now.
Right. Yeah, the energy orbs that you get in Will of Wisps basically act as a currency, where sometimes you can buy or upgrade said badges that you're collecting too, and it's not all like hammer attacks. Like I had a combination of on my 3 face buttons, because they totally changed up like even the way that it like the button layout is different from Blind Forest to make it more combat focused. Like like your 3 of your 4 front face buttons can be assignable to what you want them to be. So on one, I had my like long range arrow attack, which you can upgrade in different ways, either for like short range multiple arrows or like even longer range. One of them was that hammer attack. And like another one is kind of an ability thing that I don't necessarily want to spoil, but there's different abilities you can get to explore other areas. But yeah, there's just a lot of like freedom to kind of tackle this game the way you want. There's kind of a main campaign, but like a good Metroidvania, there's lots of secrets, and you can go off on, a couple hour tangent to go find other things or side quests or whatever else. And there's like easy ways to teleport around the world, like quality of life stuff. Like it's just really good.
Yeah, and back to Blind Forest too, and I might have to go back and finish that up. And I know that we mentioned like I really loved how that game just kind of like I went and picked it up like months later, and it was able to pick up kind of right where I left off, just based on like the menu and like looking up on like the save screen and like, oh, here's what you were doing, here's where you are on the map. Did you feel like, I know you kind of played this through in one sitting ish, not in one sitting, but in one kind of quick.
It was my focus game, for like a month basically. Yeah.
But did you feel the same kind of setting on that front?
Yeah, I never felt like, and I've talked before about like it's easy for me to get lost in these sort of games, and that was never a factor. in this.
Nice.
And to be fair, it wasn't really that much of a factor in Blind Forest either, comparatively to my experience with other Metroidvanias. So, yeah, I hold this game in pretty high regard.
Nice. Same length too, roughly-ish?
Roughly, yeah. I would say so. Yeah.
Nice.
Around 10-ish hours or so, I want to say, somewhere in there.
The perfect length.
Yeah.
The perfect length. And it sounds roughly like the length of at least John's last playthrough of Metroid Dread here, which will just stick in the Metroidvania territory. And we actually all have played some of this one. I've probably played the least. I just beat the first boss earlier today, and I'm not talking the Emmys. I'm talking like the first actual like boss monster, I guess.
Was there a quick time event in that boss fight?
I don't think so.
Then you didn't fight the first boss, buddy.
What do you mean by a quick time event?
Oh, you would know.
I don't know necessarily.
No, you would know.
I don't know necessarily because I did fight a boss that I had like a sort of cutscene-y thing happen one time, but I died that time, and then the second time when I fought the boss, I did not have that happen, but I beat the boss.
Yeah, you don't. Okay, so that's actually a side note on Metroid Dread is that you don't need to do those, but they do make the bosses way easier if you do hit those counters. So that's just it's a little tip from John here. If you feel like you're stuck on a boss in Metroid Dread, practice those counters.
The counter with like your flip the arm cannon thing.
Yep.
Are we talking that primarily?
That melee.
Okay. Yeah.
When you were talking some of those Ori attacks, that's like exactly what I was thinking.
Yes.
That we were going to talk this next is like, especially that you can do that like on the run. And like we've talked about Metroid games ad nauseum on the podcast, and especially Metroidvanias. And I'm kind of probably coming at this from being the least Metroid fan out of all of us. John, probably the biggest Metroid fan out of all of us, and Randall somewhere in the middle. Is that safe to just kind of blanket statement?
I think so.
But coming into Dread, I was pretty excited. I never played Samus Returns, but really kind of liked how that game looked like it had a quicker pace to it. Like I always feel like Samus feels a little sluggish in like Super Metroid and the original Metroid, like just kind of like slow. The jump feels kind of heavy. Like there's a real weightiness to those games. And like as soon as I saw the trailer for Dread, I was like, whoa, Samus is like zipping around.
Oh,
and, it feels that way immediately in this game. As soon as you retake control. And they do a pretty good job of, I know we talked about Metroid Fusion on the podcast recently too, when you played through that, Randall. And again, John's a huge fan of that game. But yeah, they do a pretty good job of kind of wrapping up the story, giving you like a quick, okay, get you caught up on whatnot. At first I was like, these cutscenes are kind of cheesy. But then like once they got into like the actual like game cutscenes, it was like, okay, that was more like a little prologue kind of sequence at the very beginning of the game. I actually really liked how those looked, but like I was like, this is kind of almost, I don't know, it just looked kind of chintzy if that was going to be like the whole game's art style, I guess. But yeah, right, as soon as you take control of Samus, you're like, you are running around really quickly. You get like a slide maneuver. Like right away, I was like, okay, I already like how this feels, especially the way like your arm cannon is just aiming whatever direction the joystick's pointing. I will say right off the bat, so mad that you can't remap any of the controls. It's just idiotic that any game doesn't have that.
Fair,
but especially for a first party Nintendo title, like I right away was like, oh, I really wish the missiles were on the left and the slide was on the right, and I was like, man, I can't change that. So it's been frustrating. That's really been my only frustration with the game, is having to like get used to the controls, where like I could easily set it to controls that would just make sense to me. But I'm having to like think all the time. Like I hate that the slide and the lock and place button are on the same side of the controller. For whatever reason, I really like wish they were on opposite sides. But anyways, otherwise, I've really been enjoying the game so far. And I know, John, you beat it already multiple times.
No,
and
not
Randall,
multiple times. Just once.
I thought you said you beat it multiple times. No?
Nope.
Okay, I thought maybe we were talking about one of our buddies that were going back and trying to like speed run through the game. But Randall, you said you're roughly halfway through.
I think so.
If you had to guess.
And I will say, like, I don't have those those issues with the controls. I guess like there is absolutely a learning curve, and I'm sure John will get into that too. But John actually warned me as much.
Yeah,
like prepared to see the game over screen often, and
very often, but it is
very often
so nice with its checkpoints and respawns in a way that
it is.
Has not been a typical thing for a Metroid series. It's usually like you die and you go back to the nearest save point. But they built this game around you dying often and failing often, and
that's fair. Yeah,
so they anticipate that if you die, like, then it would be frustrating for you to make the same trek over and over again. Oh. So there's plenty of spots in the Emmy zones where you die to an Emmy and you spawn in the last entrance to the Emmy zone. Like, it's such a great, like, honestly, that was one of the things that cut down on frustration, because I was able to, like, anytime that I failed, I was able to go right back into the exact point where I failed. Yeah. Not have to do a bunch of, like, retreading the same spot, being like, there's actually the most frustrating point is the, I guess spoilers. In the final boss fight, you have to go through like 2 elevators, like that have nothing in between them. And I'm like, man, you did this so well for the entire game. Why do you have to do it on the final boss that you have to like go through? But like
Fusion kind of did a similar thing though that way, where I was like, I lost that final boss multiple times, and it was like up the elevator, through the rooms. I mean, try again.
And that's kind of like, I guess, part of the, I don't know, charm of it, where it's like for the last boss battle, they would place the save point so far away because you had to do the gauntlet of getting through the area, and then, of course, however much health you had by the time you got to the boss is what you had. So, but we don't have that in this one. It's just a needlessly long elevator for. Anyway, that's one time in the entire goddamn game. But the thing that I love about this game, and spoilers, I adore this game. Like, I really, really love this. This is giving life to the best parts of the past 2 Metroid games. Which Other M had some really good combat, and then just really awful other mechanics in it, like
and the general like kind of story presentation.
It was
a little
fine. I don't think that story was as bad as people like to rag on it. Like, I think that's people on the internet hating things for the sake of hating things. But like the point and click with the Wiimote onto the screen to find in the like adventure game splash screen, where you have to find the one object out of place in order to trigger the battle with Ridley. It was like, no, this sucks. I have no idea that I'm supposed to zoom in on this one broken panel on the wall in this like 180 degree panoramic that I'm anyway, they kept the good parts of Other M, which there wasn't a ton of, but there was enough of good ideas in that they were able to bring those over into like the boss battles with like the counter quick time events, which I think are pretty well executed. Like, when you do have to get used to them, but
it caught me off guard, the first one. Like, I thought it was like it didn't feel like I was in control, because like when you said quick time event at first, I was like, well, it wasn't like telling me to input any buttons or anything at any specific time. So I was like, it wasn't a quick time event. But at one point I realized, I was like, oh, I can like charge my blaster and like blast this thing. It's kind of like wrangling me around. Like you're almost like wrestling with it. Yeah. At least on this first boss. And like, but the second time I ended up just like, I was like, oh, I better keep my distance. Cause like I didn't realize I could shoot it until the one time. And I was like, oh, if I can only get one shot in, I was like, I'm just going to shoot my missiles at this thing.
You can get way more than one shot in. On
I realized that like a few times later. But it's a really cool mechanic, and it's very cinematic, as is the whole game. I mean, a lot of like, it's just really fluid. Like, I don't know. They've mapped everything out really well, where like the first time you're going through an area and an Emmy's chasing you, it's like, it's almost scripted in the sense like they know you're gonna slide through this little vent area, and then it'll like switch right to a cutscene of like you coming out of like the little shaft that you slid through. I don't know, it's just really fluid. I've been really impressed with like how, and again, I know like they always talk about how games have a tough time running on the Switch or, you know, don't look as good on the Switch. This game runs like a dream.
It does.
At least so far. And when you get a game over, it's like pretty quick. Like you're right back into the action. I will say I have a little bit of a gripe with how many game overs, at least in the way that they're coming about. Cause like dying to an Emmy is really already getting old. And I just started this game, like in the sense like
better.
Well, but it's not the sake of like, I'm not getting sick of it. Like I'm already like getting the timing down of like just getting caught by like it's just the same every time. It's kind of frustrating. I find that to be kind of like, I don't know. I feel like that's kind of I would complain. That's a bit of a complaint. Like it'd be cool if every Emmy had kind of their own traits, and maybe they do after the first couple. I don't know, but I've eliminated 2 and they both were the same.
They're incentivizing you not to get caught, though. Like that's part of it. Is like you're like playing tag with this thing practically. You're just running, scrambling around this, and like it's sweet because it's a Metroid game. So there's like multiple paths you can take to like run around to get away from.
Oh, it feels
this
awesome.
Thing.
Yeah, running from them feels awesome. But
the agility you feel. Oh,
yeah,
so good.
That agility is that's a great word for it. But like, yeah, so especially. Good. I don't even have the morph ball yet, but just having the slide and being able to like slide under certain areas and seeing certain areas that like I know I'm going to be able to get to when I have the morph ball.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know. You guys don't find that kind of like it, cuz it almost like you get trapped by an enemy, you get like 2 chances to kind of like counter their attack. And then if you get a game over, it kind of like freezes before they even like attack you, and it just goes to like a black and red game over screen. Like it's just kind of repetitive. I don't know. It loses its flavor after a few times. Like it's already lost its effect on me.
The Souls games prepared me for pain, I guess. And I wasn't even that good at those. I just got used to like difficulty and just like, nope, we're taking this. You lost. Try again. Try again.
I guess I'm not necessarily complaining about the dying aspect of it. I'm complaining about like the presentation of it, like how you don't actually die, like you like freeze. It doesn't even show the kill. It show like, and not that I want to see the bloody kill. Like it kind of shows them just like coming up to you, and then it just goes like game over. Like
no, this really thing goes through your chest, man.
The needle goes through the helmet.
It's very, I guess I just didn't notice that, but it's very anticlimactic to me. Like it just feels like, oh, okay, do it again.
Yeah, I don't know. I disagree. Like I also like don't like interact with them in the Emmy zones. Like the whole point of it is to avoid them and to like not encounter them. Like you see their position on your mini map so that you know to avoid the areas that they are. And like spoilers, like they do get different abilities, and each area is tailor made to those different abilities.
Nice.
No, so I like these tactics. That's making me happy.
The tactics that like you use to avoid them are explicitly designed to not work in the next Emmy zone. So you have to learn, like each time, like you're doing different tactics, and you have to learn different. Like it's not really a stealth game; it's an avoidance game, and it's trying to use all of your abilities and your knowledge of the map and try to plan a way so that you don't interact. Like, because the point is, like, if an Emmy touches you, it's
dead.
Almost a guaranteed death.
Yeah.
So, like, you need to, like, not be close to them at all. And you need to plan your route so that you're not close to them at all.
See, I don't find I don't find it's almost a guaranteed death. I feel like I have the timing pretty much down where
I still
pretty
don't.
much not going to die at least 50% of the time. But again, that's not it. Just for whatever reason, it just is like, I guess it's just because it's the same every time. It kind of loses its impact or something. But again, maybe they change once you encounter different Emmys.
Also, I didn't get caught by Emmys that much, so
yeah, maybe you're just a stealthier player than I.
Amount of this.
Yeah, I just find like I've already found it kind of grating against it. But again, like you're already mentioning them on the mini map. That's another gripe I have. I have that with every Metroid game and every Metroidvania game. The maps are just terrible in these games. There's too much shit.
What?
There's too much shit on the maps, man.
What?
I will say that
hard.
there are too many icons in this one. I wish that they had kind of kept like their old, like, just here's an item instead of here's the like shaded out version of a missile upgrade versus a health upgrade.
Yeah, that's true.
But like, other than cluttered. That, I think it's a really great map. I think it's
cluttered, but it's better. It is more readable, at least in the sense of like knowing like, oh, I've been here, I haven't been here. Because that's my struggle, especially with Castlevania games, because they'll just be like a little tiny flashing pixel, and you're like, oh, that's a door over there. Oh, that, like, I don't know. This game, I don't know. I have found it's a little tough to navigate. Like, I do find myself pausing. Like, I'll go to the next room, pause, look at the map, go to the next room, pause, look at the map. And that's what I usually complain about with most Metroidvanias. But because this game has that speed, I'm like, I just want to keep zipping around. But
you can do the D-pad thing too, though, right? You can bring out like a bigger version of the mini map with like left on the D-pad, I think. But saying that, even still, I paused, I would say half the time I needed to look at the map because I'm like, I need a bigger picture than what it's even presenting me with to kind of orient myself in where I'm at.
Yeah, but I will say the Emmys have a nice effect of like not like I can't pause and look at the map, or even though I guess I probably can, it's not gonna like not let me pause the game. But like I feel like I can't, or it's not gonna give me any advantage. Like I just feel like, okay, I gotta fucking get out of here. Mm-hmm. So I do appreciate that. But what were you about to say, John?
No, I was gonna say like a thing that simultaneously I thought was great and also incredibly frustrating with the mini map or the map in general was the shaded in areas. Like. Yeah. So you'll get into an area and it'll only shade in the amount of that room that you've actually gone through.
Right. Which is touched practically.
Which is immensely helpful for when, like, if you're playing this game without a guide, you will get stuck. And you're trying to figure out where's the next area because it doesn't follow a linear path. You're kind of going from area to area later on in the game. And it's like, okay, well, I've never been to this. I've been into this room, but I basically walked in and then walked out because I couldn't do anything. Let me go back there. But my complaint is that the shading is done almost on like a pixel by pixel basis.
Yes.
Which is infuriating for someone like me with like compulsive disorder and like what needs to shade in every so like once I got space jump, I'm just going literally to every room and jumping around and filling in the shader on every room because I'm a fucking nightmare person.
100%.
That's amazing.
It doesn't even factor into the percentage. It's just me being.
It's not a map percentage thing.
No.
That's awesome.
I get it though. I totally get it.
But I know I've been kind of griping, and I feel bad because I actually was coming into this being like, oh man, I'm like into a Metroid game. So I feel bad that I've kind of leaned into my gripes so far because I will say like I'm really excited to boot this up. It's been a long and play some more because it's been a while since I've like booted up especially like a full-fledged like AAA game, if you will, and like kind of probably since Breath of the Wild. Well, I guess Odyssey was after that, but I haven't dug into a game like this in a while, and then felt the compulsion to like, oh, I want to play more. Like I played the hour earlier knowing that we were going to talk about it tonight, and like, oh man, I think I'm going to maybe stay up a little later and play another hour or so because I was really like that boss was like a perfect stopping point of like, ooh, I beat this boss. I got a little momentum going.
Oh yeah.
And I do love, again, like I know I mentioned how cinematic everything is, but especially like when you get like that cannon, that arm cannon upgrade.
Oh yeah.
For, like, when it kind of goes in. Almost like I wonder if it maybe was even inspired a little bit by the other M mechanic of like pointing the Wii remote at the screen because it kind of goes into like this like aim. And at first I was like, are they going to do that for the first time you get the can? I was like, is the whole rest of the game when I go into this like locked aim mode, am I going to be in this like super like over the shoulder Gears of War camera mode? But obviously as soon as it powers down, I really like that element. It's like it's got a little more puzzly element of like, oh, you got to find the thing or kill the boss. I guess the boss
taking down an
upgrade,
enemy,
but like
it feels incredible.
It does.
It is. It feels very, and just like I don't know, the 2001 Space Odyssey kind of vibes of those Emmy creatures. Like I just everything about the look and style of the game. It is a little bland looking, maybe, if for lack of a better term. Like some of those like electric walls that you climb on, like some of the textures or some. I don't know. It just looks a little Like it almost looks like a 3DS game at times, if that makes sense. But
I mean, I think it's the engine it was built on, right?
Yeah,
that
for sure.
Returns.
And honestly, it definitely makes me want to play Samus Returns. Yeah,
it's kind of making me want to go back because like the reason why I haven't gone back to Samus Returns is that like a thing that happens in most Metroid games for me is that there's always a boss that I dread facing in like every playthrough. And like there were a couple bosses in Samus Returns that I was just like, after I beat them once, I'm like, I don't want to play these again. Like, but honestly, like after playing Dread and like really going through the gauntlet on a lot of bosses, I was like, you know, maybe I can go back to Samus Returns, because Samus Returns is this game. Like it is the same engine. It controls basically the same. Like there's a lot of the same power ups and like stuff. It's like
the same like parrying combat.
Ooh.
Yeah,
feels the same. Like there's a couple like differences in mobility, but like the template's pretty much exactly the same, and it feels great.
Nice.
And like the only problem is that you're playing on a 3DS and then your hands cramp after a while.
You know what? It was exactly the thought I had as I was playing Dread. I was like, you know what? I need to play Samus Returns. And then I was like thinking about how much I was hammering the shoot button. I was like, man, that would fucking suck on 3DS. But it's true. Any game that I have to like really like button mash on I was going to say 3DS, but really any handheld really gets kind of crampy. But especially because you feel like you have to kind of steady that second screen. Like you don't want it like wiggling around or getting loose. So like on a PSP or a Vita, like I feel like I'd be a little more comfortable like kind of wiggling the whole system around a little as I mash. But yeah. But
the other thing I will throw in on Metroid Dread is also talking to John. He was prescient about this as well. Is oh my God, I'm so glad that I got the amiibos, and like they are so hard to get, but they give you an extra energy tank and an extra like 10 missiles, and oh my God, like
that would be super nice to have.
Like I was still losing to that first boss with an extra health tank, an extra missile.
It's a hard boss. That first boss, you're talking like the non-Emmy, right? Like the first like kind of monster boss.
Yeah, that you have to like slide underneath of and stuff.
Yeah,
it's pretty much the same. Like even in the like later final bosses, like they just keep scaling the damage they do. So it's like,
I know
I got hit once and that's a third of my health. Yes, I have all these energy tanks, but it's pretty much still like 3 hits and I'm dead. Like,
oh baby. Yeah.
It's rough. It's tough. It's rough stuff.
It is. But it keeps you on your toes. Like you really have to be engaged.
And then it does kind of get to a point where you just like memorizing like attack patterns from bosses and like getting to be as perfect and no hit as possible. Like, and most of them do still have like the ability to like spawn like a couple health things and a couple missile tanks, but
they spawn them pretty decently actually. Like even when you're just like shooting them like randomly, they'll just spawn them, but then like when they go into like the different phases, they usually spawn another batch.
I will say I've only seen like 2 major bosses, but the agility of your control means like the bosses are less bullshitty than I felt like Metroid bosses typically are. You know, like because of my ability to like really fully control Samus and like do all the different moves in my disposal, like, and there's different phases of the boss, which there's a little bit of in other games, but not like this. I don't feel like
wait until you have basically like unlimited movement around the entire room, and then some of that those boss battles will be like, okay, cool, I have exactly 1 safe space on this screen and I need to space jump into that and be there for the duration of this beam.
Well, because even in Super Metroid, they don't have a button to like lock you in place, do they? They have the button to like shoot on an angle, but they don't have the like let me stand stationary and then point in any direction I want, basically.
Just angles.
So that alone just feels so nice for the bosses, because you can like, let me just zip around to where I want to be and then just stand still and like fucking fire away with those missiles. Like it's so it feels so good.
Yes.
It really does feel nice to be in control of Samus for me especially. Like I always feel it just feels nice.
New Metroid game.
Samus Returns, baby.
Yes.
Yeah, might have to borrow that copy from you, but I still have to play the Advance Wars that you let me borrow first. So, which I've had since like the beginning of COVID when you dropped that off. I think when you were like, when you picked up the microphone, I think you were like, oh, you got to borrow Advance Wars.
Hey, that Switch remake's coming out at the beginning of next year. So
I know I was gonna say they just pushed it back a little. So. Yeah. But that's all right. There's too many games coming out. I can't keep. I still haven't popped in WarioWare yet. So,
oh man,
I bought it day it came out. I still haven't even popped it in, or almost day it came out, anyways.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think any more. I'm sure we'll talk a little more Metroid Dread at some point because I'm definitely gonna hopefully see this one through. I'm guessing with Randall, the tear you're on, I'm sure you're gonna see this one through.
Yes.
And it's nice to see that. I think John, you said you beat it in a little under 10 hours, so
yeah,
it's nice to see. Like in my brain, I equate Metroidvania to being like 20, 30 hours. So it's like to me, it's like. I know people were complaining about this game being short, and I'm
That's
like, I heard that it was short, and I'm like, yes, please. 8
all
to 10
Metroids
hours
are
is
designed
every
to be
game.
beat in under like 8 hours, I think.
Yeah, 8 to 10 feels like the standard for a Metroid series game.
Yeah, and for Ori for that matter too. So
yeah, it's definitely like 12 for Ori.
Okay, say, but still, that's perfect.
Yeah,
for like a game that you're gonna get like lost in the world. Let me go on an adventure with this game, but like don't overstay your welcome.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah. But yeah, I think we can pretty much wrap it up there this week. And yeah, as always, you can find us on the internet at pursuingpixels.com. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're on YouTube. We might even be doing a little Twitch again here and there. I might start doing some streaming.
Nice.
I'm going to try to have like a little bit more of a weekly schedule. So I might start adding some streaming. But don't forget about the indie game book club we got going on too. We've been playing a ton of cool games there. But otherwise... yeah, we're on the internet, and we'll catch you next week.
Bye. Bye-bye. I'm turning back into a hockey guy, actually, now that we have the Kraken. I've been catching some games that way. So they're not good, but that's kind of how it's supposed to work when you're a brand new expansion team.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been fun.
Hockey's a fun game to, like, similar, like... very different than basketball in the sense that it's nowhere near as high scoring, but it's very much like back and forth.
Yes.
In the same way that basketball
is. The flow.
Yeah.
They're my two favorite
fast-paced game.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a little less stop and go in hockey. You know, it's like, it's just fucking go. There's not a lot of like penalties and as far as like compared to fouls and stuff.
I'll tell you in basketball, the rule changes have made there be more flow there as well this year.
That sounds great.
It's awesome.
That's my one main gripe with basketball is like, especially at the end of a close game where it's like timeout. It's like, man, this like, there almost should be a rule. You should be penalized really heavily for doing like the hack-a-shack routine. Like there should be more than just making that person take a free throw.
Right.
I don't know. There's just something that should be like that should really detour a team from like when you pull the goalie in hockey, that's like the other team's probably going to score a goal and end the game, but like maybe you'll get a lucky break and
a little risk
get
reward.
The power play going.
Yeah.
But it's a little too easy in basketball to extend the length of a game.
Should make like the ability to make the rim bigger or some shit. Like
it just starts angling.
Why not?
Oh, that's hilarious.